Primetime Fantasy Football is brought to you by Next Level Radio. Head over to nextlevelradioonline.com for past episodes of Primetime Fantasy Football and the Showcast, plus celebrity guest spotlights. Now, on to this week's Primetime Fantasy Football.
People I never thought about associating with. I don't know what it is. Talk to me. Check it out. Hey, from the Vegas with a mansion on my land. Full jacuzzis and my neighbors can't stand. The way I live is oh so fast. I got your ladies and prime time is all that.
Whoa, Dion. It's not that kind of prime time.
Yeah, man, it's Primetime Fantasy Football on Next Level Radio.
Well, alright.
Welcome into another edition of Primetime Fantasy Football. I am one of your three hosts, Adam Gorey. I am joined again in studio by Joe Webster and via Skype with Steve Richards. How you guys doing tonight?
Good.
I'm doing well. We should make sure that we get an endorsement from Skype, though.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Steve is joining us via Epix. We're going to call it Epix. That's actually Skype backwards. So, yeah, actually, EPYKS.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a
Sounds
fancy
good.
spelling of Epix. Anyway, welcome again, like I said, to Primetime Fantasy Football. This week we are going to break down the NFC East, our final division. We are all very happy about that because we can spend more time on other stuff. We're going to wrap up this week's important information from the preseason week number 2. The all-important week number 3 is next week. And then we'll give you our running back rankings. If you have questions for the show, make sure you email them primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com, or you can tweet them in at NXT Level Radio, hashtag PTFF. You can also send us your email to that primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com if you'd like to get in on the free, yes, I said it, free Fantasy Football League. I believe there's still maybe like 2 guaranteed spots left. Once we get to 12, I'm going to have to take names, put them in hats, and pick 4 names. Now, if only 4 people request that, then your luck is good. However, if 10 people request it, your luck goes down. So let's get right into things. Starting off with the weekly wrap-up. Robot Bill still has yet to come up with an introduction for that. We'll get him on that because that's going to be a segment that we probably do here on out, I would assume. First off, we'll start with the 49ers and the Broncos. More Carlos Hyde this week. His ADP right now on ESPN, I should say, is 131. Yahoo, it's 117, and Fantasy Football Calculator, it is 93. Where do you guys, where would you take? We'll start off with you, Joe. Where would you take Carlos Hyde?
I think where Fantasy Football Calculator has him is where I'd be more inclined to take him. I think even though I'm still in the Frank Gore camp, I just think at that point in the draft, Hyde has a lot more upside than a lot of the other guys on the board at that point. And the way that I probably will be building most of my teams this year will be running backs pretty early. So at that point, I think I'd be looking for just more flyers and guys that could hit. So I think the Fantasy Football Calculator is where I'm looking.
Okay.
Ninth
And
round.
he didn't have, he didn't put up huge stats. He only rushed 4 times for 11 yards, 1 catch for 9 yards, but I believe they had him working with the ones a lot. So, Steve, what are you thinking? Where are you going to take him?
I think for me it might depend on if I end up with Frank Gore or not. Like Joe said, he's with Frank Gore. I'm maybe not as high on Frank Gore as Joe is. But I think Hyde is a really good handcuff option for me at this point, like one of the probably higher handcuff options in the league right now, just with the way that 49ers like to run it and maybe the way that Frank Gore could end up during the season. So he's a 93 is a good spot. That's what, the 9th, 10th round in a 10-team league. So
Yeah.
I might go a little bit past 93. Of course, if I'm in a league with Joe, I might not get him there. But I think I'm
Yeah.
yeah, which I am. So I think I might go a little bit later than 93, maybe closer to the 100 range, which is where I like to get a good handcuff, and maybe either have him as trade bait for whoever has Frank Gore, or like I said, if I have Frank Gore, then I got a good solid handcuff in my possession.
Yeah, it's tough for me because in the 9th or 10th round, depending on who's there, I might be taking my quarterback. So I would have to come to the decision, do I want to take him earlier than that 93 or later? And right now, I guess for this year, if it's a redraft league, I'm leaning later. If it's a keeper league, I'm leaning earlier. So for me, it depends what league you're in. Because a redraft, I think you get some value out of him this year. But he's much more value to me, obviously, in a dynasty league and a keeper league, because I think next year is where he really takes that big step into fantasy production. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, every year they've been saying Gore's going to dip in production, and every year it doesn't happen. And that's why I think I'm still kind of on the Gore bandwagon, maybe as a second running back. But I agree in keeper leagues or even dynasty leagues, he should be picked much, much higher.
Yeah, also in this game, Peyton Manning just tearing it up, 12 for 14, 104 yards and a touchdown. Where would you take him? Would you take him in the first round? And if so, where in the first round? Steve or Joe, I'm sorry, we'll start off with you again.
I've grappled with this with a league or two that I'm in the end of the first round. I know at the beginning of the first round, I don't think there's any doubt it should be a quarterback, and then there's some.
You mean a running back?
I mean a running back. I'm sorry, yeah. And then receivers.
Matt
There's a couple
Stafford,
of them.
Drew Brees.
Yeah, right. But you get to the point in the end of the first round, especially in a 12-team league, where you're looking at running backs that aren't 100%. You don't want to bust. Whereas if you can get Peyton Manning at 9, 10, or 11, you guarantee you're going to have a top 3 quarterback at the end of the year. Still, for me, I'm not interested in a quarterback that early, so I don't think Peyton Manning will end up on any of my teams this year. I'm more likely to wait. If he fell into my lap in the second round, I don't know if I could pass on him then, but I don't think he's going to last that long. I think in every league there's somebody who's going to take Peyton Manning first round.
Yeah, Steve, what about you?
Yeah, I'm firmly with Joe on this one, where I wouldn't take him in the first round, and that probably means that I wouldn't get him because somebody will take him in the first round, and you'll probably get good value later in the first round. I think 10 or 9. 9 would probably be the earliest that I would take him.
Okay.
And it depends on what goes in front of him. Like you said, running back is really thin. So if you're with the 9th pick and everybody's taking running backs, you might not like what you'll see. So you take Peyton Manning because he's going to score you a bunch of points. But I'm kind of with Joe that I don't think I'm going to take him in the first round. So that probably means I won't end up with him.
Yeah, I think for me, the only way I end up taking him on any team is if I'm the last pick in the first round, whether it be a 10 or 12 team league, just because, I know with my very next pick or pick before, whichever I decide to take him in, doesn't really matter. With my other pick, I can get a solid position that's there. If I'm picking in like 8th maybe or 9th, it's just hard for me when there's so much value at quarterback this year to not take like a top wide receiver or a top running back.
Ideally, I'd like to give him in the 5th round.
Right. Yeah, that's your ideal.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen though.
Yeah.
I like the way you're talking about the snake draft. If you have the last pick, you might as well take him with one of them because you know exactly the 2 players you're getting.
Yeah, it's just a matter of does he
last pick the snake draft, then you might as well go with it.
Yeah, if he falls to you, that's the big question.
Right.
Moving on from the Saints and Titans game, Justin Hunter had another big game. He's having a really great preseason. His ADP right now, ESPN is 130, Yahoo 125, Fantasy Football Calculator 128. Do you think he's a potential sleeper being at that draft position, or is he like more of a preseason hero where he's just showing more of his skills because he's not playing with a lot of first team defenses? Joe?
I think he's a sleeper. I do. I think Jake Locker can put up points. I think they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. I do think he can be a pretty big sleeper. I'm still not sure. I am a little afraid that what we're seeing in the preseason is the best he's going to do. So you may find some people who are going to draft him a lot earlier, thinking they got the sleeper of the draft at wide receiver. So he's another guy that I'd love to get. I'm just not sure if I'm going to because of the hype that's starting to come around about him.
How about you, Steve?
Yeah, when you use the word sleeper, I don't see 130, 125, 128, wherever he's going in drafts. I don't see that. I think that's his fair value. So I don't necessarily see him as a sleeper. I think you can expect what you get. You might even get, it might be a value pick at 130, but I don't see it as a sleeper pick.
Okay.
I just think that that's pretty much where I could expect, and I know what I'm going to get taking Justin Hunter at that point.
Okay. he obviously didn't play the full game this week. He had 4 catches for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, pretty good against, although I don't think the Saints defense is that fantastic.
The thing is, that could be his best game of the year, though.
Potentially could.
Right. Yeah.
Probably will be. But when looking at his other receiver on the team, Kendall Wright, do you prefer him over Kendall Wright? Right now, Kendall Wright's ADP in ESPN is 94, Yahoo 82, and Fantasy Football Calculator 87. So, I mean, he's going roughly about 4 rounds before Justin Hunter.
I like Kendall Wright this year.
You do?
I
Okay.
really do like Kendall Wright. He's someone I am targeting as a possible flex guy, third wide receiver that could produce wide receiver 2 numbers some week. I don't know if he's going to be as consistent. Like I said, I think Jake Locker can put up points some weeks, but I don't think he's consistent enough, which will then probably hurt Kendall Wright. But I do like Kendall Wright a lot this year, so I do prefer him over Hunter.
Okay, Steve?
I think when factoring in when people are going, I'm going to go with Hunter before Kendall Wright, just because I'm not sure about anything in Tennessee right at this moment. We'll talk about a little bit about the running back situation as well. I'm just not sure what their offense is going to be like. They're a little bit inconsistent as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to go with the guy going later because I see Justin Hunter and Kendall Wright kind of being a mishmash type of thing in the same scenario. So if I can get a guy late, that's what I'm going to go with.
I actually agree with Steve here. I'm going to say Justin Hunter just because of that 4 rounds later. If I can get, I think with Tennessee, they could potentially put up numbers that aren't that far away from each other. I could see Kendall Wright. I think there's a lot of hype surrounding him this preseason, and I don't know if I'm buying into it 100%, mainly because of Jake Locker, I guess, in that offense. But, if I had to pick one, I'd probably wait on Hunter. But moving on to the running back situation, Sean Green had a bit of an injury. I think he hyperextended his knee?
Yeah, hyperextension.
Which is the same knee that gave him problems last year. So, I mean, he said he was fine, but that's always a little bit of worry. Now, Bishop Sankey's was working as the 3rd running back behind Dexter McCluster. Do you think maybe Dexter McCluster could be a little bit of a sneaky pick here, or do you think it's going to be all Sankey once the final depth chart comes out?
I think McCluster can be sneaky in PPR. I think that's where you want to try to target him. And in a standard draft, I'm not going to touch him probably. Sankey, I think, is going to get majority of the carries. But I think Sean Green right now, I'd have to look up his ADP. I can look that up right now. But I think he's going really late. And I think he could actually provide some value at the end. It looks like he's going in the 13th. In the 13th round, yeah, and I do think he may have a chance to get some goal line carries. I'm not at all a big Sean Green fan,
no.
But if you look at some of the running backs in that area that he's being drafted, Jonathan Stewart, Niall Davis, so at this point, Ronnie Hillman, you're looking at a lot of the backups that he's in, but a lot of those guys have more solid guys ahead of him, whereas it's still out on Sankey. So I think Sean Green could be had at a pretty good value.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, Sean Green did practice on Monday.
Right.
So obviously the injury isn't too serious at this point. What about you, Steve? What are you thinking with the Titans running back situation?
I think that there was I think he lost a fumble, Sankey did, in the preseason game, and then that kind of came out that people are worried about ball security and things like that. I still think that he gets the opportunity. It's been proven a bit now with Eddie Lacy that rookie running backs can be impactful in a offensive system. So I'm kind of in the Sankey camp certainly more than Sean Green. And like I agree with Joe that McCluster's more of a pass catcher. He's more of a 3rd down type back. So I think Sankey will get the most opportunity, and he's going to lead the way as far as even if it is a committee, he'll get the most carries, I would think.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with both of you.
The thing that scares me about this whole situation is I think about Denver's situation last year. Monty Ball came in as a rookie.
Yeah.
They said he was going to get the chance to go at it. And who do you have behind him, right? Hillman and Moreno. They weren't going to overtake him.
Right.
Moreno ended up being a top 5 back last year. So now he also had one of the best offenses in the league to do that in. So I do get that. It's not exactly the same. But Sean Green has had some success in the NFL. And if Sankey can't get it done, I do think Sean Green actually can put up some points this year. But overall, I do think Sankey should contribute and be the main ball carrier.
Okay. Let's move on to the Steelers and the Bills. Le'Veon Bell and LeGarrette Blount apparently were named co-starters, I guess last week or for the game. Bell rushed 4 times for 11 yards, Blunt 3 times for 0 yards. Are you reading into this at all? This, because I know Le'Veon Bell actually said, I thought Le'Veon Bell said at some point that, he thought Blunt would get the goal line work.
I think he was the one who said that, yeah.
Yeah. So does that worry you at all? Does that drop your Le'Veon Bell value at all, Joe?
I did drop him a little bit in my ranks, not a whole lot. I still have him in the 14, 15 range. I know we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it does. I still think he's going to be someone who's involved more in the pass game. But if you've got Blunt taking away his goal line carries and all that kind of stuff, I think it can hurt his value.
Yeah. What about you, Steve?
I think we'll talk about the running backs a little bit later, but this kind of speaks to the frailty of the running back situation in fantasy as a whole this year. And you're just not really sure. There seems like there's so many teams going with committee. I don't think this was really talked about until recently. So it's kind of tough, and I definitely think it hurts. There's none of the news that comes out is good news.
Yeah.
So, the sharing of the carries and losing the goal line carries. So I think it's certainly something to monitor and something to look at, and maybe something to figure out before your draft if you want to take him where he's going, which I think is pretty high. I think he's still in the second round and things like that. So
yeah,
I think you definitely might want to think about that before taking him.
Yeah, and we will talk about our running back ranks a little bit later, but I did drop him a little bit in mine. He only played on 9 of 17 first team snaps in Sunday night's preseason game against the Bills. Now, this week will be kind of the week to monitor a lot of these guys because it's the third preseason game, and as we all know, the third preseason game is tried to be played up like a real game. It still kind of isn't, but and then next week we'll maybe play it up like we're recapping a regular season week, huh?
We can give that a try.
That'll be our preseason week 3. The Bills, their offense very lackluster this preseason so far. Are you targeting anybody on the Bills when you're drafting, Joe?
Maybe if Watkins is still available late in the draft, but there's always in every draft there's going to be somebody who wants to go after the flashy rookie wide receiver. So I think he'll go a lot earlier than I'm willing to take him. And it's what I said last week when we talked about Watkins. With E.J. Manuel throwing to him, I'm just not trusting him in that offense.
Steve?
Yeah, my answer is pretty flat no. I think I'm just not interested in Sammy Watkins and the hype machine that goes around it. I think he already he's dinged up or something like that.
Yeah.
So
ribs, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's not really a positive sign. And then Spiller's already been dinged up. Fred Jackson is an okay handcuff type guy, usually, because they kind of split carries, and you can probably get him pretty late.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when he's going, but you can probably get him later. So, like Joe said about Watkins, if you can get him in the right spot, I'm kind of in that camp with Fred Jackson.
Yeah, I'm not sure, other than maybe Fred Jackson, especially in a PPR. Fred Jackson had 7 catches in that game this week.
Really?
Yeah, for 28 yards, but 7 catches.
Still 7 catches.
Yeah, there's not really many people I'm targeting. I've really fallen off the CJ Spiller boat, which is rapidly sinking at this point. EJ Manuel just hasn't looked that great. I was hoping this year would be a nice, solid second year for him. It's not really looking like that's going to be the case. That remains to be seen. But, I don't think unless they fall late, I'm not touching, I don't think, anybody on the Bills team. Moving on to the Dolphins and the Buccaneers. Poor showing for Lamar Miller. What are your thoughts on, Moreno's, I believe he was practicing this week. What are your thoughts on maybe Moreno getting back into the picture as possibly the starting running back for the Dolphins, with Miller not having great performances, Joe?
I think they're going to try Miller out. I think they're going to continue to give him the ball, and eventually they probably will either go to a committee or switch over to Moreno. I just think I want to like Miller so bad. The hype was huge on him last year, and I was one of the guys who bought into it. And I don't plan on owning either of those teams. I think Moreno's top 5 finish last year was more of a product of him being in the Denver offense. So I don't think I'm going to be going after either of those guys this year.
What about you, Steve?
Yeah, I'm over Moreno. We've talked about that pretty much this Jump Street. Adam and you and me have talked about how much we don't want to avoid Moreno, or we do want to avoid Moreno. And I'm reading this. My Roto World is telling me that it's more the offensive line than it is Lamar Miller. So, maybe if they can get it together, I think Lamar Miller is a better running back. So no Sean Moreno won't be able to do anything with a poor offensive line, just like Lamar Miller wouldn't be able to. So
Yeah, there's
Miller over Moreno, but like Joe said, I'm leaning toward neither at this point with the way that Miller's shown up in the preseason so far.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that I think Miller is the better running back.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of can he get anything going behind that offensive line.
Well, I remember he had a bad preseason last year, and you'd listen to everybody. Oh, he'll get it
Bad
together.
regular
He'll
season.
yeah, and then it just continued. And the
Yeah.
fact that it's not picking up, I'm just anticipating it happening.
Okay, well, let's move on to the Ravens and the Cowboys. Bernard Pierce, do you think he could start even after the Ray Rice suspension? It's coming out. This is off of Roto World as well. He rushed 7 times for 55 yards in the preseason game. He got the quote-unquote start over Ray Rice after Ray Rice started the first game, potentially indicating that they're going to have possibly a competition for the starting job. So are you maybe buying into that at all, that Ray Rice could lose his starting job to Pierce if Pierce maybe performs well enough in those first 2 games?
I don't see it coming to the point where Pierce is the main starter and Rice is just a change of pace back. I do think if Pierce continues to play the way he is, and all of the beat writers are saying how great of a camp he's having, that it will become more of a running back by committee. Mm-hmm. But I don't see Pierce just outright being the bell cow for this team and Rice sitting on the bench.
Okay, Steve?
I like Bernard Pierce. I think that he certainly, like you said, he's got plenty of opportunity to prove himself because obviously Ray Rice isn't going to play for those first couple games, and they don't have anybody other than Pierce and Ray Rice. So Pierce he's going to have a chance at least to prove himself for those first couple games that he is capable of taking the load. So I think Bernard Pierce can move up in draft rankings, and he can kind of prove himself after the first 2 games, and maybe, like you said, 50-50. I think 50-50 split with Ray Rice is a win for Bernard Pierce.
Absolutely.
And a good look toward the future. So that's his optimal case scenario, but that's not a bad scenario to have.
Yeah, Ray Rice currently 49.4 ADP with Bernard Pierce at 82, so going quite a few rounds later, and that's off Fantasy Football Calculator. I actually am on Steve's boat again with Bernard Pierce. I really like Bernard Pierce. Ray Rice is only 27. You wouldn't know it.
No.
He probably has the miles of maybe like almost a 30-year-old running back. Bernard Pierce is only 24. You also probably wouldn't know that either. I probably would have thought he's like 25 or 26 just because it seems like every year he's right behind Ray Rice. I actually think he could start seeing more of the workload as the season progresses. And obviously starting for them for 2 games regardless is a good thing. But I think Ray Rice could have some more injury problems. He already left last week's game with a shoulder issue, so I mean that could be something that lingers. He's got a lot of miles on him. The next one we got going on is the Browns versus the Washington Potatoes, or the Washington Racists, however you want to look at it. For the Browns side of things, you got Ben Tate and Terrence West and Johnny Manziel and Brian Hoyer. Now, obviously, we know the result today is that Johnny Manziel did not get in the starting position. Brian Hoyer did. Do you guys think that you'd still take a flyer on Manziel?
I don't think I will. I don't think he's the kind of guy I want to put on my team. I don't see him really contributing that much. Maybe later in the year, maybe as someone you pick up, but I'm not going to be drafting him at all.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere near him at this point after watching that Monday night game. It was hard to watch.
Yeah.
He was just all late on all his throws and things like that. He just wasn't. What was I watching today? I was watching PTI today, and Peter King said Manziel lost the job, Brian Hoyer didn't win it, which is exactly what happened. So that's not. I'm not sure how often how early Johnny Manziel is going to even get to start, but
Game 4.
You certainly don't draft him. Yeah, maybe
5.
week
5. Right after the bye.
Game 4, week 5.
Yeah. So I was right.
They have a bye coming. Yeah, so I certainly wouldn't draft him.
Earliest,
yeah.
I probably wouldn't even pick him up once he's named starter. I'd probably wait to see if he can do something for real.
Right.
Well, I think what you would run into in that situation, if you don't pick him up once he's named the starter, somebody's going to.
Somebody will.
Yeah.
There's that guy in every league.
Yeah, I'm not drafting him. I'll be that guy, whatever. I'm not drafting him unless I'm in an incredibly deep league, and even then probably not. There are just other quarterbacks that you can go after that will be starting and probably playing better than he does.
I thought he looked good throwing on the run. The problem is, though, is that he's on the run so
He's
much
always
that
on the run,
he's
yeah.
going to be he's an injury risk.
Right. Next up, you got the Ben Tate and Terrence West thing. Terrence West did not have a good game. He rushed for 31 yards on 8 carries. Ben Tate had a much better game. I don't have his stats in front of me, though. But they were good. They were better. What are you guys thinking of this situation? It seems like, to me at least, Terrence West is fading back, and Ben Tate's maybe coming on a little more strong.
That's exactly what I was going to say. A couple weeks ago, if you told me, I would have said, Terrence West is a guy that I think can win the job eventually. But Ben Tate's showing what he can do. I mean, right now, I think Ben Tate, after last games, I moved him up a couple spots on my rankings.
Yeah, 51 yards on 10 carries.
Yeah, this is another scenario of why you want to draft as late as possible. Because I certainly, if I was drafting last week, I certainly would have taken Terrence West much higher than I would have if I'm this week. It just looks like Ben Tate is back on track, and they're much higher on Ben Tate now. So it's certainly, I think it's Tate over West. I'm not sure what their ADPs are or where to compare in that sense, but I'm looking at Ben Tate before I'm looking at Terrence West for sure.
Tate's 57, West is 90. Again,
yeah, I mean that kind of
calculator,
evens it
so.
out, which I don't know if I would take Ben Tate with the 57th pick, but
yeah,
again, running back thin.
The only thing with Tate is that I would have to probably take West.
Yeah.
If I take Tate,
And which means you're going to probably have to take him earlier than,
what did I say, 90 something?
Yeah.
Just because of the whole injury issues with Tate.
But this is going to be a run-first team, especially with the quarterback issues. So if you can lock those two up, I think you're going to get, between the two of them, possibly a running back 2 stat line between the two of them, whether Tate gets injured or even if they're coming in and out. So I think if you grab one, you want to grab the other.
Yeah, you'll get some production out of one of them.
Right.
For the Washington team, RG3 shaky again. Jackson going in the 5th. Morris 29 yards on 11 carries. That's not very good. Who are you highest on and who are you lowest on, Joe?
I want to, I want to like Griffin more. In another league, I've had him on my team for 2 seasons. One year won me the league, believe it or not. Last year, I actually was second in my league, but I drafted him, but he wasn't on my team very long. I still think that once he gets a little better at maybe running out of bounds, sliding. I mean, he took a huge hit. Is
he going to get better though?
I don't know. I'm hoping that he does.
Michael Vick never got better.
No, he didn't. But I think if in the right spot, I do like Griffin. I still think he's going to put up numbers with Jackson. I mean, the one thing that I will say is that his deep ball, and I can't remember who he threw it to. Maybe it was Andre Roberts or somebody on there.
It was
Andre Roberts. It was perfect. I mean, the guy can throw a deep ball.
Right.
And with his rushing stats, I mean, you just got to deal. If you take Griffin, you're going to have to draft a second quarterback because
earlier, yeah.
Yeah, because he's probably
you might even draft him. I was just going to say, I don't know that I would draft him as my starter. I might draft him as my backup. And I think he could fall to that backup range.
He may.
I think he's in like the 9th round right now. He might fall back into double digits pretty soon.
Yeah. I'm still high on Morris. I know that stat line doesn't look good, but I'm still pretty high on Morris.
What about you, Steve?
I'm kind of unsure about Alfred Morris, just kind of piggybacking off of what Joe said, just because of the coaching change. I'm not sure where they fall on the running platform versus the passing platform, and I know that Shanahan decided he loves Alfred Morris, and once he picks one, he sticks to it. So I don't know what the deal is with Alfred Morris. 29 yards on 11 carries. I guess I'm reading more into the stat line than Joe is. I'm not too high on him. I don't know. I'm trying to decide who I'm highest on, and I don't really like Deshaun Jackson in the 5th round, but he's probably the player that I'm highest on, but I don't know that I would take him in the 5th round at this point. And I've said a couple times that I think I'm going to try to avoid Robert Griffin just because I think that there's other quarterbacks that people aren't drafting as high, but I think are going to have a better year, so I think I'll be able to avoid Robert Griffin and be okay with it.
Yeah, I think I'd be lowest on Griffin at this point. Highest on probably Pierre Garçon. He seems to be the only one to me that, I mean, he had, 110 catches last year or something like that, and I think Jackson there actually helps it for him, especially with these new rules. I think Jackson is going to require a lot of double coverage with these new rules. Mm-hmm. The new rules with the contact issues help these speedy guys because you can't jam them off. I don't think you're allowed to jam off the line of scrimmage, are you? Anymore?
I don't know if it's not I think you can. It's just
You you can't touch him anywhere after 5.
Yeah, if you
five,
even
okay.
just touch him after 5 yards, they're
Right.
throwing flags.
So I think it helps the speedy guys. So
Yep.
a guy like Deshaun Jackson, who probably can get by your first cornerback, is going to require a lot of safeties over the top, which opens up things even more for Pierre Garçon. So he's the one I'm highest on. Morris, I'm a little iffy on him, and I've had him on my team since I traded
You're
got him
welcome.
from Joe a few years ago. Since he was a rookie, and I'm actually a little bit worried about him this year. Same thing with Steve. I mean, the coaching change, they're not attached to anybody. I actually like, and we'll get into it when we do Sleeper Spotlight, but I kind of like Roy Halou this year as a bit of a sneaky pick. Not necessarily to take over for Morris, but maybe to work in a little more than just third down backs. He's going to be the third down back. Halou is.
Yeah. Morris is
Without
not a
doubt.
catcher.
Morris can't catch. So that's not good, especially if they want to pass the ball.
I'm waiting to the third game to really see what I can do with Morris. Right now, after the second game, they're not really game planning.
Right.
They're not. I'm not too low on him
Yeah,
yet.
I'm still starting him and drafting him.
Sure.
It just worries me a little bit,
Yeah.
that's all. 2 more left. We got the Bears and the Jags. Steve, I'll let you take this one since you're a Bortles fan.
Blake Bortles alert, baby. Can't stop the train. You can only hope to contain it. No, they said they're not going to play him this year. I mean, don't draft Blake Bortles. I just get excited about Blake Bortles. But I'm taking him before Johnny Manziel, but I wouldn't take either one. He's probably still not going to play. I just got excited. The actual fantasy relevant news here is they're talking about once the regular season hits, 15 to 18 touches for Toby Gerhart. I don't know about you guys. I'll see what you guys think, and then I'll chime in. So where does that affect you guys as far as his value goes now that this news is surfacing that Gerhart will end up, we're hoping for 15 to 18 touches per game?
I think I'm a little disappointed. I don't think he's the kind of guy who's going to break off a lot of long runs. So to me, that looks like 15 touches to 18 touches. That looks like a low
Less
yards.
than you were expecting?
It would be less than I was expecting a little bit. I was hoping he'd get more to 20. I think I just kind of assumed, he's a big, powerful back. They just feed him the ball, feed him the ball, feed him the ball. And now I don't think he has a great yards per carry in his career. Maybe I'm wrong on that. So to me, or maybe I'm just thinking of the preseason.
Yeah, I think it was like 4 or something.
All right, so
for
that's
his
not
career,
bad. Then
yeah.
maybe it's just in the preseason it hasn't been as good. But depending on the way you structure your team, I'm okay with Gerhart as a number 2. I'm not drafting him in the second round if you go running back. But if you go running back, receiver, or quarterback, or tight end,
Yeah, you'd have to flex probably a receiver.
right.
in that
But
situation.
I'm okay with him.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, he's not going to get touches from receiving, I wouldn't think. I don't think he's a big pass catcher. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 here and there.
Right.
So I was thinking probably like 18 on the low end for
Yeah.
his touches per game. Just like you said, ground and pound, feed him the ball. But I know a lot of people are scared about the Jags getting down a lot. So I mean, it actually doesn't raise my value for him at all. I don't know that it lowers it much either. I don't think this does really anything for me.
Yeah, I'm actually concerned. I'm in with Joe. A little bit concerned about the 15 to 18. I was hoping for 20 or more.
Right.
Just because, like you said, I think he's more of a workhorse. And I think if you let him run for a while and give him a bunch of opportunities, he's going to break one eventually. But he's also the kind of guy that can break down a defense. And then that's why in the fourth quarter he'll break off some longer runs because he gets the defense tired and not wanting to tackle his big old body as much. But I also, to borrow from a previous segment we have, I'm not sure I'm buying this with a buy or sell. I think I'm going to sell this.
Ditching
as
it.
a boost.
Stigger
Yeah,
ditch.
ditch it. Yeah, yeah. I just don't. I'm not sure. I think they're going to go with more touches than that once the season actually comes around and they realize Gerhardt's probably their best offensive player. He'll probably end up with more touches as the season wears on.
Yeah, I actually agree with you there.
The other, I'll take it.
Yeah,
the other news from that game, so to speak, not necessarily the preseason game, but the Bears signed Santonio Holmes this week, the hero from the Super Bowl when Pittsburgh won it, of course. So for you guys, is he fantasy relevant? Does he jump into your receiver ranks anywhere? I know we rank 60. Would he jump into those ranks anywhere?
No.
No, I'd rather take a flyer on somebody that I think could have a higher upside, especially for the Jaguars. I'd rather. I'm sorry for the Bears. I mean, yeah, no.
If the Jaguars signed him, I'd actually have more value.
I meant to say Bears. There's just too many mouths to feed there.
Yeah.
With Marshall and Jeffrey, and I don't think he goes anywhere. I don't think he's really relevant.
I agree.
Yeah, I hear you guys on that one. We just reporting the news and figuring out if they're fantasy relevant. So I can agree with you guys, and there's definitely other people that'll you can take a flyer on. I would think for sure.
Yeah, I don't think he would crack my top 60.
I hear that. And then I think the last piece of it that we have is the Chiefs and Panthers. Joe, do you want to take this one? I think you uncovered some good news here.
Yeah, I mean, right now, all the talk right now is on this rookie tight end out of Kansas City, Kelsey. I don't think he's in the top 10 yet, being drafted at all. I mean, I think he's in the 13th round, but he is just a monster. In the last game, his stats he put up, he was 4 for 4 on his target, 63 yards and a touchdown. He's still listed as a number 2. If I'm not mistaken, Fasano is still listed as the number 1. But Fasano, he'll catch an occasional touchdown here or there. But I think he's more of a blocking back, which is a run-first team with Jamal Charles. I understand that. But I think there's going to be some games where he is going to be – I think he's kind of this year's Zach Ertz. Everybody knows he's talented as a rookie, but he may not contribute as much because he's got the guy ahead of him that's going to be in for blocking and can still catch. But I think especially dynasty leagues or keeper leagues, he may be somebody you want to look at late because he's supposed to be doing really well in camp and doing everything they're asking of him.
Do you think he could be this year's Jordan Cameron?
No, only because he has somebody in front of him, and I'm not sure if he's a blocker. I think he's really more of a pass catcher.
Okay. Steve, what are your thoughts on Kelsey?
As soon as as Joe was talking, the name Jordan Cameron did come into my mind, only because that's who I really want. All three of us are in a league that has a 15-round draft, and I would really, before the draft even started, I was all, okay, I'm going to take Jordan Cameron in the 15th round and steal him. And that's kind of what I'm thinking with Kelsey, just for upside, and tight ends seem to make an impact, and early at least. So I think in the 15th round, I would target Kelsey if he's there, and definitely think about it if I don't have another home run swing sleeper type pick. I think this guy could fall into that category for sure.
So I'll mark him down for my 14th round then.
14th.
Yeah. Also, Cam Newton, just kind of average so far, but he did miss a big, deep throw to Benjamin. So to me, this speaks more to Kelvin Benjamin being involved and getting open deep. Cam Newton, I think we all kind of went under, or maybe I forget where we did. Maybe we were all over because it was a bad year. But I really just don't like what he has going on there. But every year, he still finishes as a top 5 back. I don't see that happening this year, but his preseason has not looked great now.
No, I'm not worried. I actually am still okay on Cam Newton, and I'm looking forward to him dropping in drafts so I can get him.
I agree. Dropping to the right point in the draft, you can't miss on him because I still, especially in a 4-point per passing touchdown and his rushing stats. Steve, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I love Cam Newton. I have ever since he's come into the league, essentially. And like you said, he's always a top 5 quarterback as far as fantasy goes. And I also completely agree with you that every week seems to pass, and Kelvin Benjamin seems to continue to rise. I wasn't really that big on him when we first started with training camp and these podcasts, but as it goes on, I really like Kelvin Benjamin. I'm certainly taking him before Sammy Watkins if we're talking about rookie wide receivers and things like that. He's probably number 1 on my rookie wide receiver list at this point, and I would actually be excited to see what he does this year.
Steve finally came to my side. Would you put him, I believe last week I had him, 32, so I had him just inside, starting or something like that. I don't remember, but would you move up to that now at this point?
Yeah, it's close. I mean, last week, we just did these rankings last week, and I am at 43, and I'm looking at him thinking I'm an idiot because it's way too low. But, yeah, I'm definitely – but I also had, like I just mentioned, that I would take him as my first rookie. I had Watkins at 38, and I think that's the highest rookie I had. So you have him at 32, you're right. And I would certainly put him closer to 35 range at this point. I'm excited about what he's doing, and we said that Carolina is looking for a target, and it certainly looks like Kelvin Benjamin's going to be that guy.
He's all they got.
Yeah.
I mean, I think just because of that, I agree with Adam where he had him last week. I certainly didn't have him that high, but looking at my rankings, I'm going to move him up. The last part of that game is Jonathan Stewart. I mean, he didn't run much. 4 carries, 26 yards, but 2 touchdowns. So he had 6.5 yards per carry in that game, and he is being drafted really late. I have my thoughts on him. I want to hear what you guys think. Adam, what are your thoughts on Jonathan Stewart?
I like him better than D'Angelo Williams, even though D'Angelo Williams is listed as the starter. I would take Jonathan Stewart in the 12th or 13th round all day. Just because I think he eventually, if he stays healthy, he can be a great fill-in. You're not going to have him starting, most likely. But I think he can be a good fill-in type of guy for bye weeks.
Steve, what do you think?
I think the Carolina running back situation continues to confuse the hell out of me. I'm not really sure what to do there. This is the ultimate. They've been in a running back by committee for years now. Like you said, I think I would put D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart pretty much in the exact same spot. But if Jonathan Stewart is going to perform like this and pick up some goal line carries and some touchdowns, he's obviously got more value than D'Angelo Williams. So I think it's definitely something to monitor. And if you can get him really late, like Adam said, and he ends up being a goal line type guy or maybe even a quality guy with yards per carry, I think that's a good get for you late in the draft.
Well, are either of you putting any value on Tolbert this year? Because he's usually the goal line short yardage guy. Do you think Stewart gets more than, do you think Tolbert fades away from that?
I just think where Tolbert's going, I'd just rather take a shot at a guy that has potential to be a top 30 back or a top 24 back, and Tolbert doesn't have that.
No, he doesn't.
So that's why I'm not going to – but, I mean, he's got his – if you're in a really deep league or a touchdown-only league, something like that, he may have some value there. But, my thoughts on Stewart is that he's just never healthy. I think if he were healthy, I think the guy could be a stud. I think he could outscore D'Angelo Williams, but – he's never proven to stay healthy, and I don't think he's going to do it again. But right now, you've got D'Angelo Williams going to 9th and Jonathan Stewart going in the 13th. And if you're looking for value, I really do think it can be Jonathan Stewart in the 13th.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Stewart is 4 years younger than D'Angelo Williams.
Right.
D'Angelo 31, Jonathan Stewart 27. Age doesn't always play a factor. Cough, cough, Fred Jackson, but usually it does. All right, so that wraps it up for the weekly wrap-up. Let's move on to the NFC East. The Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, and potatoes, racist potatoes. We'll start off with the Sleeper Spotlight.
Prime time fantasy football's Sleeper Spotlight.
All right, kicking it off with the Sleeper Spotlight, we'll talk about the quarterback position. I believe, Steve, you were in charge of that this week?
Yeah, I was. And I'll just start with Nick Foles, who had a great year, led the league in quarterback ranking. Also averaged better than 20 points per game. He only played 13 games. But he averaged 20 points per game fantasy-wise when he was in there. Ended up with 2,890 yards with that touchdown-interception ratio that was one of the best of all time at 27 touchdowns to 2 picks. Also ended up with 220 yards in that read option type offense.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched every game, every play, and I don't think I realized he had that many yards.
Yeah. He had 3 rushing touchdowns as well. And then his 2-point conversions canceled out his fumble loss. He had 2 of each. So we're going over or under. We'll look at the per game because he only played in 13 games. So over or under, almost 21 points per game.
Adam, what do you think?
I'm going to go under. I'm going to go under just because I don't think he can hit 20 per game again this year, especially after losing a guy like Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I still think he's going to be a really solid quarterback in the Chip Kelly offense. But if you're talking 20 points per game, I'm going to take the under on that.
By the way, Steve, you are aware we're doing Sleeper Spotlight, right?
Oh, is that what we're doing?
Not anymore.
I know you can't hear the effects, but yeah, that's what.
All right. Well, in that case, now that we did the,
I mean, it doesn't really matter because we actually in the Sleeper Spotlight we're kind of talking about all of them except for Eli Manning anyway.
Exactly, because, what I have written down here is Griffin, Foles, and Romo. They're all going right after each other and in that order. So Griffin's going first, Foles and Romo, they're all going in that 9, 10, 11 range, 10, 11, 12 range, depending on what you look at for as far as ADP. So who are you guys ranking the highest? We're going to leave out Eli Manning here because he's not really being drafted.
Yeah.
So Griffin, Foles, or Romo?
I'm going to actually flip the order that they're currently going in. So I'd go Romo, Foles, Griffin at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm in that same boat. There's part of me that thinks that Foles. There's part of me that the allure of what the Chip Kelly offense is and what he did last year that I think Foles can be good again this year. I just think that Romo is just going to have so many opportunities to throw the ball because their defense is so bad. So I go Romo, Foles, Griffin.
Yeah, the thing helping Foles is that a lot of high completion percentage passes, so he could do a lot of dump offs that go for touchdowns.
Right.
So that helps.
And with all of his rushing yards.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
The rushing yards.
I'm Foles, Romo, Griffin.
Okay.
I think that the back injury for Romo is something that
Yeah.
is a bigger deal than they're leading. For everything that Romo is, he is a pretty tough guy. So I think that he wouldn't talk up the back injury, even if it was a thing. But I think that it is a thing. So, and Foles is coming off a good year. I don't have any reason to really doubt him at this point. But I am going to go Foles, Romo, Griffin, just because of Romo's back injury, pretty much.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. Okay, so let's move on to the running backs, and you guys can tell me if you agree or disagree with either of these guys. We're going to go Roy Halou. I had mentioned earlier his ADP right now for ESPN is 145. Everywhere else, it's kind of undrafted. Already mentioned that it's been confirmed he will be the third down running back, mainly because of his pass protection and catching ability. But I think, especially if they decide to get away from Morris a little bit, he's the guy they're going to start going to. And then secondly, I have Lance Dunbar. His ADP on ESPN is 170, Fantasy Football Calculator 153, and we already talked about last year the Cowboys apparently resting him because they have such big plans for him this season behind DeMarco Murray.
I think the only way I'm going to draft either of those guys is if I have either Alfred Morris or DeMarco Murray, especially DeMarco Murray, because he's never played full 16 games.
Right.
So just going on track record, Lance Dunbar is probably going to get a lot of carries in a couple of games. Roy Halou, if I have Morris, maybe I'll take a flyer. But even if I take Morris, I'd probably not even go after Halou. I don't think even just being on third downs is enough for me to draft him.
Yeah, I like Dunbar more. I think ESPN, when it says 170, I think that might even mean undrafted for ESPN. I think they just put all their undrafted guys as 170 or something.
I think you might be right.
So I'm definitely higher on Dunbar. Just pretty much what Joe said with the injuries to DeMarco Murray, and I think Lance Dunbar has a chance at least to be fantasy relevant. And I think that Roy Halou, I bought into the Roy Halou stuff 1 year and it didn't work out for me, so I'm kind of spurned on that. But also, I think Lance Dunbar just has a better chance. But I don't mind having Roy Halou as well, especially if he goes undrafted, and having him on a waiver wire as well. So I think they both have sleeper capability. I'm just either or. I'm going on Dunbar.
Steve, I don't know if you can hear that, but I think Joe's playing some kind of game on his computer.
Oh, okay. Candy Crush, yeah.
I was trying to find Halou on the ADP, and when it didn't come up, that was the noise that told me that it did not come up.
That's why we leave our computers on mute here, Joe.
I'm learning.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, it seems like this year it's like handcuff central when it comes to running backs. It's almost like whoever your starter is, you kind of want to handcuff whoever their backup is.
It's all the committees.
Yeah. So let's go on. We have no wide receivers, I guess. So let's go on to tight ends.
Yeah, I have the two Eagles tight ends as sleepers here, and not necessarily on the ADP, but where they're going as the number of tight ends that are going ahead of them. Ertz is going 107th in his ADP, which is the 11th tight end. And then Brent Selleck is going 123, which drops him down to the 17th tight end overall. Neither of them really did too much last year as far as production goes. Selleck scored a little bit more than 5 points per game. Ertz a little under 5. They kind of had the same production, but I think maybe they're due for bigger years this year, and I think they might be better than 11th tight end to 17th tight end. Where are you guys on that front?
I think Ertz is going to be the main red zone target for Nick Foles. So I don't know how many yards he's going to get. I still think Brett Selleck is going to have his yards, but I think when it comes to touchdowns, you're going to see Zach Ertz score a lot more touchdowns this year. Maybe not a lot more, but he's definitely going to go up in touchdowns. Brett Selleck, I just think there's too many other guys out there with more upside than Selleck. Selleck's kind of who he is. He's always been that way, so I don't think I'm going to be reaching for him, but I definitely like Zach Ertz this year.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big Ertz guy, and Selleck, I like how he plays the game. Being an Eagles fan, but just fantasy wise, I don't see it there.
Agree.
So yeah, I'm gonna go Ertz all the way.
Yeah, especially when you only take one tight end. If you take two tight ends, I actually would really like to have Selleck as my second type of tight end. I think he has potential. I think Ertz. I might take Ertz before the guys that he's going behind. Is kind of the point I was making, like Pitta or Jordan Reed maybe has a little bit of an injury problem. I think I would take Ertz before both of those guys. So that's kind of where I came from.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm not sure. I really like Jordan Reed.
I like Pitta.
We'll each take one of them, and whoever scores the most points.
I think this sounds like a bet this year.
It does sound like a bet. All right. We'll have to write
tattoos
down here. Yeah. Oh God. All right. So that does it for sleeper spot. I don't think we have any wide receivers. Joe, did you think of any sleeper wide receivers?
You know, I didn't add him in our list, but I mean, I think one guy that I was going to talk about with the over/under that you can probably consider a sleeper is Terrence Williams out of Dallas. I do like him as the number 2 wide receiver this year in Dallas, and as much as they're going to throw the ball, I think he's going to have a lot of value, and he's going pretty late in these drafts. So I think he's a sleeper that a lot of people are starting to come around on.
Yeah, he's going 83, which is actually a little higher than I would have thought.
Actually, yeah, me too. So maybe that's
at least
not
that's fantasy football calculator.
Well, yeah, I was going to say maybe that people are starting to come around on them. So
I actually was thinking maybe possibly Jordan Matthews. He's going 128. He's a guy that, with Macklin's injury history, could very easily end up being an outside guy. I know they want to keep him in the slot and everything, but if Macklin is hurt, I got to think they'd be crazy not to slide him into the outside. I mean, they got so many other guys who can play the slot. Ertz can play the slot. Sproles can play the slot. I mean, I just think he would do so much better if he's not in the slot, playing in the slot.
I don't disagree with you, but that's going to take an injury to happen. Whereas Terrence Williams is already solidified as the number 2 wide receiver, which maybe makes him not a sleeper because of that.
He's also going like 5 rounds earlier.
That's true. I'll take them both.
Okay. Steve, where do you stand on those? Those 2 or maybe another one? I know you're a Jordan Matthews fan, so I think you're going to take my side.
Yeah, I do very much like Jordan Matthews. I wish he would get more first-team reps at this point, honestly. But as a slot guy, he could be a solid slot guy, and the Eagles are going to have a lot of plays run. So I don't know. Do I really want to say Ruben Randle? Not really. But in the 13th round, as the number 1 receiver in New York, I mean, they got to do something eventually. Hopefully they throw it farther than 10 yards down the field. But Ruben Randle's a giant person, and kind of like what Joe said, as a main red zone target, I think Eli Manning's main red zone target this year is going to be Ruben Randle. So,
are you down on Cruz then, Steve? Are you forgetting him?
I don't know how he fits, and I guess maybe he fits pretty well, but as a slot guy in this shorter passing system, but
sure.
I don't really know where he fits in and all this. Okay. I don't really know what the Giants are going to look like on offense. Hopefully
just like they are in preseason. That'd be nice.
Yeah. For Eagles fans, hopefully, exactly. But hopefully for Giants fans, they're not showing everything.
And for fantasy purposes, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not real high on any of the Giants, but as late as Ruben Randle is going, I think that he has a chance for some touchdowns and to get some better value in the 13th round.
All right, well, let's move on to over-under real quick, and then we'll talk about our
It's time for over-under.
What I was going to say before Robot Bill cut me off, we'll talk about our running back rankings. So thanks a lot for that, Robot Bill.
You're welcome.
All right, over-under, we'll start off with the quarterbacks. We already said Nicky Foles under.
I don't think we got Steve's, though.
Steve's, yeah. What did you say, Steve? Did you say over under for Nicky?
Yeah,
Foles?
I agree. I'm in your guys' camp actually on the under.
Okay.
I don't see how it's possible to go 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. I guess I don't know. I mean, he had 22 points worth of running yards last year, but I don't know.
That's got to go down.
Yeah, duplicate that either, but it's kind of a per game thing. I'm not sure he's a 20-point per game quarterback. It would be nice if he was, but I'm not sure that that's going to be the case.
All right. Well, real quickly, we'll go through these over-unders, and Steve, I'll let you take away with the rest of the quarterbacks for the NFC East.
Cool. So the next one up is the Cowboys guy and Tony Romo. He scored 200. He scored more points than Foles, but he played more games, so his per game average was only 18.5 compared to Foles' 20. He ended up with 38-28 as far as yards go, with 31 touchdowns, 10 picks. Not a runner, 38 yards, and then his 2-point conversions and fumbles also canceled each other out. He had one of each. So over/under 277.9, which was good for 18.5 per game. I think, Adam, you started with Foles, so you go ahead first with Romo as well.
This one's tough for me. I'm going to say under. I think he's going to start declining starting this year. I know there's a lot of hype going into them passing a lot this year, and I know they're going to be down in a lot of games, so they're going to have to pass a lot, but I think he's going to take a lot of hits. That back is going to be tested, and he takes a lot of flack, but he is actually a relatively quote-unquote tough quarterback. He'll stay in there for the most part, but yeah, I don't know if that back's going to be tested enough to take all those hits when he's dropping back 40 times a game. So I'm going to say under.
I was going to say over, but I don't think I realized his
Did I
touchdown.
talk you into it?
Well, no, just looking at the stats, I don't think I realized his touchdown to interception ratio was that solid. 31 and 10 is really good. I do think his yards can go up this year. I think he could be in the 4,000 yards.
Yeah.
But I'm not so sure if he, especially because of how often he's throwing. I think those INTs go up. So because of that, I say under.
Yeah, I'm under as well, and I think I'm going to stick with the reason on the sleeper spotlight. I think his back injury is a bigger deal than people are leading on. And I'm not sure what kind of year he's going to be able to have with that back injury. So I'm going under as well. And the next guy is Eli Manning. It'll be tough. Might be tough to go under on him, but he scored 203 points last year, which was good for 12.7 per game. The numbers, he only threw for 10 less yards than Tony Romo, but he also threw for 17 more interceptions.
And
his ratio was
13 less touchdowns.
Right.
Yeah, his ratio was 18 touchdowns, 27 picks.
Even for him, that's
in
bad.
that category last year. Also, not a runner. And to get close to 30 turnovers, he also had 2 fumbles lost last year. So, over under for Eli Manning this year. Is he relevant this year?
Yeah, I'm gonna go over, but still not fantasy relevant.
Agree. Don't have to say much else.
That's the trifecta. Robert Griffin III. He went for 228 last year, but again, he played the same amount of games as Foles, 13. 17.5 points per game, which isn't too bad for a guy that was coming off an ACL and injured a little bit last year. Ended up with 3,200 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 12 picks. He is the runner of the division. Ended up with 489 rush yards, 2 two-pointers, but also lost 4 fumbles.
I am going to go. This is tough because, I'd like to say over. I think that's kind of what you're going to get from him, though, about 17.5 per game. So I guess if he plays a full 16, he got to go over on the total, and 17.6 per game I'll give him. So I'll go over on the average as well.
I think I'm higher on RG3 than the two of you guys are. I think over. I think he's in the 20s for the touchdowns. He still may throw a couple interceptions, and I don't think there's any slowing him down. He's going to run a lot. I don't think he had too many rushing touchdowns. I think that'll go up as well. So I'm going to take the over, and I think it's going to be over by quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm not high. I haven't tried that game. So,
we still talking about quarterback?
No, we're not talking about. But I'm going to go under on Robert Griffin. The 17.5, I think it might be close, but I am going to go under. I think he's closer to 16.5, 17 range. So I'm going to go under on that one and kind of be in the opposite camp as you guys.
All right, well, let's move on to running backs. LaShawn McCoy will start out with 278 points last year, 17.4 per game. In a PPR, he added 52 catches to make it 330 for 20 points per game. 1,600 yards, 9 touchdowns, 539 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, and a fumble lost. Joe, you going over or under?
It pains me to say this. I'm just going to say under because I just thought last year he was absolutely amazing. He was a stud. That's why his Twitter handle's cut on a dime. Watching this guy play is amazing, but I still think he puts up numbers that put him as a top 3 running back this year, but I just don't see him hitting those again. So I take under.
Okay, Steve?
I'm over. I like
it.
the way that he. I like the way that he was in Chip Kelly's system. They like to run, and I think he's better than as tough as it is to say. I think he's better than 9 touchdowns rushing. So
yeah,
I think he's got a chance to go over. So I'm excited about LaShawn McCoy this year, and I'm over even though he put up some pretty hefty numbers last year.
Yeah, I'm gonna go over as well. Same reasons, basically. The system commands a lot of plays, and he's their number 1 running back, and I don't think Sproles is going to get many carries, if any.
I think his reception totals could go down a little bit,
right,
and that's where I think the under comes from me.
Right. Moving on to DeMarco Murray, played 14 games last year, 205 points for 14.6 per game. PPR added 53 catches for 258 points and 18.4 per game. 1,121 yards, 9 touchdowns, 350 receiving yards and a touchdown there with a fumble lost. Joe, over or under 205 or 14.6 per game for DeMarco Murray?
I'm going to take the over. I think if you have him ranked inside your top 10, you got to hope that he can get more than 1,100 yards, which is still a solid season. But I think in this offense, I think he's going to produce, and hopefully even the reception totals. 53 is pretty good, but I think that you can see that go up a little bit this year. So I'm going to take the over.
Steve, what do you think?
I'm going to take the under on this one, just because I don't know, for whatever reason that Lance Dunbar stuff has me convinced. Yeah. So I'm going to take the under, and I think that only it's because he's going to split some time with Lance Dunbar because they might try to conserve his body because he's not exactly durable. So that means less chances and less points for me.
For the second time in a row, I'm going under with Steve as well. I'm agreeing with Steve for the second time in a row. I'm not going under for the second time in a row. Same thing, Lance Dunbar. I almost said Lance Moore. I think you do see his receptions hover around that 53 mark, maybe even increase a little bit. But I do think he can't play 16 full games a year. So, I mean, 14 games is probably the high end of what you're going to get out of him. Plus, like we said before, they're going to be throwing a lot. He's probably not going to get a whole lot of rushing attempts per game. I mean, maybe like 15 is probably going to be good for him. So I'm going to go under for him as well. Alfred Morris, 169 points, only 10.5 per game last year. PPR added a whopping 9 catches. I'm not even going to give you the points per game for PPR. 1,275 yards, 7 rushing touchdowns, 4 fumbles lost, 78 receiving yards. Joe, over or under 169 for 10.5 per game for Morris?
I'm going to take the over on Morris. I'm still a believer in him. I don't think it's going to be much more. I think what you see, that 1,200, 7 touchdown range is what you can kind of expect out of him, but I still see that rushing number going up a little bit. It does concern me. This is the first one where I was not sure, but I'm going to take the over.
Okay. Steve?
Yeah, I'm going to take the over as well and agree with Joe. I think that even if I'm not as high on Alfred Morris, I think he's better than 11 points per game as a back, which puts him, or even if he reaches 11 points per game, then he surpasses last year's total. So I think that he might be able to get into the end zone maybe a little bit more. They might run it a little bit more. I don't know. Again, I don't know what this new offense is going to bring. So,
yeah.
But I think he can do better than he did last year.
Give me the trifecta. I'll go over as well. Rashad Jennings, 15 games last year for the Jacksonville Jaguars, not on the Giants. He's on the Giants in 2014. 9.2 per game, 138 total points, 733 yards, 6 touchdowns, 36 catches, 292. So you're going over, under, Joe. I'm kind of curious because of the whole Andre Williams hype.
The reason I'm going to take the over because of this new McAdoo offense with shorter passes. I think Rashad Jennings is actually a pretty sneaky PPR guy.
Yeah.
And I think that you're going to see his reception. I mean, he had 36 last year. I do really think that jumps up. And he only had less than 300 yards. And I think that's going to go way up. Because of the Andre Williams, I could see his rushing totals being right around that 750, 800, maybe. I don't know if he gets to 1,000, but the receptions to me is which puts him over.
Okay. Steve?
Yeah, I completely agree with Joe. I think as a lead back and a short pass / run first system, he can do better than 9 per game. And I think that he's a good pick later if you can get him later in a draft. So I would go over.
Or keep him in the 8th round.
Or keep him in the 8th round, as our friend Joe Webster has done.
Give me another trifecta. I'm going over. So, Joe, you want to give us the wide receivers?
Yeah, we got Cooper, had 140 points last year, PPR 187, 835 yards, and 8 touchdowns. What do you say on Riley Cooper, Adam?
I'm going to say under. I think he overachieved a little bit last year. I know he's still the other starting wide receiver, but I just think with Sproles and then Ertz getting more of an expanded role, his numbers are going to go down. I'm kind of not even looking at Cooper this year, and I know Steve's a Cooper fan, so he's probably hating me right now, but I'm going to go under.
I'm only a Cooper fan because he hid in the end zone on Monday Night Football.
And it got called back for a penalty.
Yeah, but I'm not sure how he'll do this year. I agree with Adam as far as the more mouths to feed type scenario, so I'm going to go under on Cooper as well, just because I think the yards and touchdowns are going to go to other people this year.
Yep, I agree. I take the under. Okay, Pierre Curzon, 169 points, PPR 282. He had a ton of receptions, over 100 receptions last year, 1,346 yards and 5 touchdowns. Adam, what do you say?
This is one of the ones because he had so many catches, I'm going to go over on standard and under on a PPR. I don't think he gets quite 110 this year, just because Deshaun Jackson does take away some receptions, but I do think his touchdowns go up, and I think he can approach that 1,300 yards again. I think he's easily a 1,200-yard wide receiver, and I think he can approach double-digit touchdowns. So I'm going over at least on standard.
I think I'm going to go under. I think that Deshaun Jackson has a chance to be the number one target for Robert Griffin, just as a new shiny toy type of thing. And I think that he'll take away from Pierre Garçon as far as the catches go. And I think that, that just means less points. Pierre Garçon's still a good option, but I'm just not sure he'll be able to duplicate 110 catches in a season.
Steve, I agree with you. It doesn't scare me from drafting him, but those numbers are really good, 1,300 yards. So I'm going to take the under on Pierre. Deshaun Jackson had a really good year, 192 points standard, PPR 274. Had his highest point total, highest catch receptions last year and yards, 1,332 yards and 9 touchdowns. Adam, over under?
I'm going to go under. I think that was a product of the offense. I mean, it was his best season of his career. I think he goes back down to still productive numbers, but more along the lines of what you saw when he was playing on an Andy Reid team than a Chip Kelly team. So I'm going to go under.
I agree. I'm going under as well. I think Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson will kind of even out to the same amount, which is, for me, at least under for both of them. I think Deshaun Jackson has a digress in production because he won't be playing in the Chip Kelly offense. And when you have career highs in 2 different categories, it's tough to match that year. So I'm going to go under on that.
I agree, under on that. Des Bryant, big year, 203 points, standard, PPR 296 points, 1,233 yards, 13 touchdowns. Adam?
I'm going over. Just like Calvin Johnson, Des Bryant is a monster, and he's a target, and I just don't see any reason to go under on this, just because, like we said, they're going to be throwing it a lot. So I don't see why he would get less points. So I'm going to go over.
I'll go over as well. And I guess we're really high on Des Bryant is the idea of this category. I don't know what I'm saying at this point, I guess. But I'm going over.
Take the rest of the show off.
Yeah, next.
I think he has all of the ability in the world to go over. I'm going to take the under, though. Not because I don't think he's awesome. I think he's a great receiver. I just don't see him getting to that 13 touchdowns again. I think there's going to be I think Terrence Williams is going to take a little bit away from that. But it wouldn't surprise me. I think the guy's a stud, but we'll see. But I'm going to take the under. So this was the guy I talked about earlier, Terrence Williams. Scored 103 points last year, standard. PPR 147, 736, 5 touchdowns. Adam?
Over. I just think he gets more of an expanded role this year. I mean, I got to go over. Plus, with not like Miles Austin really took much away from him last year, but I just think another year in the offense, his numbers should go up.
I agree with that, with everything Adam said. I'm going over. Just have more opportunities to score more points.
Yep, over. Victor Cruz, last guy, 125 in a standard league, PPR 198, 998 yards, so just short of the 1,000-point total, and only 4 touchdowns, Adam.
I got to go over. I know the offense is still going to struggle, but I do still think they're going to throw a decent amount just because they'll probably be down in quite a few games. Victor Cruz is better than that. He's better than 4 touchdowns.
I would agree. I'm not sure how high I am on him. Like I said, I'm not sure what this Giants offense is going to look like, but that was a down year for Victor Cruz, and he's certainly better than that. So I'm agreeing with Adam and going over.
All right, well, let's move on to tight ends, Joe. I think this is still you. Or is this Steve? No, this is Steve now. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, it's me. I'm going with Jason Witten is really the only guy, because we already talked about Selleck and Ertz, and then Jordan Reed didn't play in too many games. So Jason Witten's really the only tight end worth talking about. He ended up with 136 points last year, which was good for 8.5 per game. He had 73 catches, which is certainly good for a tight end, and ended up with 209 in a PPR, which was 13 per game. Ended up with the 73 catches, 850 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So over, under on Jason Witten.
I am going to go over just because I don't think they have another option at tight end, and they like to have him run routes an awful lot. And Romo looks to him. A lot of times it's his first target, so I'm going to go over.
I agree. I think last year, if I'm not mistaken, he only averages 5 or 6 touchdowns a year, so I think 8 touchdowns was pretty good for him. But I think the yardage can go up, and because of how often they're throwing, I think he could hit that number again, so I'm going to take the over.
All right, well, that does it. No, that's right. Steve has to go.
I'm gonna take. I think he's right on the number pretty much. I'm gonna take over, and agree with you guys, but just a little bit over.
Right.
Really, too much over.
I think we know what Jason Witten is.
Right. I think
Yeah,
that
exactly.
You can expect. I mean,
He may be one of the most safe tight ends you can take,
Yeah.
especially when you get him.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, you know what you're getting. From
Right.
All right, so let's move on to those running back rankings. All three of us ranked 40 running backs this week because there weren't enough rookies to just give Joe rookies. Alike, we have the top 5 are the exact same. I don't believe they're in the same order. So we'll just quick run down everybody's top 5. Joe goes McCoy, LaShawn McCoy, Jamal Charles, Adrian Peterson, Matt Forte, and Eddie Lacy. I go Adrian Peterson, Jamal Charles, LaShawn McCoy, Matt Forte, and Eddie Lacy. And Steve goes LaShawn McCoy, Jamal Charles, Adrian Peterson, Matt Forte, and Eddie Lacy. So I think, Steve and Joe, you have the same.
Yes.
And then I'm the only one. The top
Ours
three
is correct.
Top 3 is a little mixed around. We won't be saying that in a few weeks.
Right.
Also, like Bishop Sankey, the best bet among rookie running backs. I think we can all agree on that for sure. Trent Richardson, not even an RB2 at this point, not having a good preseason even. Both Lions running backs should contribute. I think I know I had them pretty close to each other. I think I actually had Joique Bell ranked higher than Reggie Bush. I have Joique Bell 21st, Reggie Bush 24th. Do either of you have Bell? I think Joe or Steve has Bush, then Bell, and I think Joe has.
I have
then
Bush
Bell.
at 18 and Bell just behind him at 22.
Okay.
Yeah, I have Bush 19 and Bell 23, so it's kind of pretty much the same.
Right.
I think the point is they're close to each other.
Yeah, I just don't like Reggie Bush.
Well, that being said, I think because of where they're being drafted, I'd probably rather have Joique Bell
Right.
because of it's a round or two later. But I think if you're saying who's going to score more points at the end of the year, I think it's Reggie Bush.
And opposite of that, no Jets running backs are going to contribute. We're low on pretty much all of them. But I guess, would we all prefer Ivory if healthy to Chris Johnson? Or I think, Joe, you might be the only one who's on the Johnson train.
It's not that I'm on the train. I just think he's going to get the opportunity, and because, Ivory has just never stayed healthy. So I just don't feel comfortable taking him.
Okay. And then, like I said, different. I had AP first. You guys had McCoy. Arian Foster is a top 10 back for Joe.
He is.
Zach Stacy, a top 10 back for me, and Le'Veon Bell, a top 10 back for Steve. You want to argue for Arian Foster, Joe?
It's not easy to put him in there, but when I look at all the other running backs, I just don't feel like any of them I trust being in the top 10. Foster has been a top back in the entire league. I am a little nervous about all the injuries and what's been going on and the way he answers all of his questions now in camp, just saying he wants to be the best teammate he can be and all that kind of stuff. But I think the guy is just – I just think if you've ever had a chance to watch a Houston Texans game, the entire offense runs through him. It's amazing to watch. They throw the ball, he runs the ball.
Former offense.
That's true, but I think I do know that Bill O'Brien likes to run the ball.
Yeah.
So I kind of put that in there with the thought that he will stay healthy.
Yeah, and with the cutting of Andre Brown and bringing in Jonathan Grimes as the RB2,
there's no one behind him.
There's no one behind him.
The fact that if he stays healthy, there's no doubt in my mind he's a top 10.
Right. If he stays healthy, he's a top 10. That's the big question there.
Right.
Steve, do you want to make an argument for Le'Veon Bell, and then I'll make an argument for Zach Stacy?
Yeah, I mean, my argument won't be very strong.
After
It's
our
kind of-
reports earlier.
Like I said a little bit earlier, it kind of speaks to the weakness of the running back class more than it does to the strength of Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I just kind of had to have somebody in my top 10, and I am higher than him than Alfred Morris, which I kind of put them in the same slot. So
Okay.
I just put Le'Veon Bell in there because I think that I know what Pittsburgh is, and I think they'll run it more, and he'll get more chances to prove himself and pick up some points.
Yeah, and for Zach Stacy, I just think he showed me a lot last year, and I think he's just gonna increase on that. I know I don't see anyone really challenging him either for a whole lot of carries, and I think he can get you some catches as well. So moving on to other differences, Gerhardt over Doug Martin for Steve. So you like Toby Gerhardt over a guy like Doug Martin. Tell us
I was
why.
the only one that had Gerhardt in front of Doug Martin, which
just barely in front of 15 and 16 for those who and you can check the rankings. We'll put them on nextlevelradioonline.com. Just go to staff blogs, and then you can also go to stevenrichards.net.
Yeah, so I mean, I just think that he'll get more chances. I was talking earlier about the 15 to 18 touches. I'm not really buying into that. I think he's going to end up being a solid workhorse, and I would take him over Doug Martin, obviously, as my ranking show. If I had the opportunity for both, I'm taking Gerhardt before I'm taking Doug Martin.
Yeah, and Joe, you have him close. Joe has Doug Martin at 15 and Gerhardt at 16.
I thought on this, but I can't. The name of the coach is Lovie Smith. He just came out this week and said Doug Martin is our bell cow.
Yeah.
They just had that injury to Sims. I think that Martin is going to have every opportunity to do what he did his rookie year. It's a tough choice. Even though I have it ranked that way, if it comes up to my pick in the draft and I have those two sitting on there, right now I'm going Martin, but it's not easy.
Yeah, I have Martin at 12, Gerhardt at 16. So we all have Gerhardt right at that 16 area. I just like Martin better. Like you said, I trust Lovie Smith as a coach more than I trusted Greg Schiano as a coach. So I trust him to use Martin the way he should be used rather than how Schiano was using him, which is running him kind of into the ground. And then finally, Joe has Andre Ellington in his top 10, where Steve and I have him. Steve has him at 13. I think I have him at 13 as well, yeah. So just outside the top 10, just outside of starting running back if you're in a 12-team league. Joe has him in the top 10.
The way I looked at it was every year, the top 10, all the fantasy pros out there, they put out their top 10, and only about 5 or 6 of them actually end up in the top 10. So I was looking at some of the guys that I really thought, and Andre Ellington, his stats jumped out at me. He only had 118 attempts last year, only 3 touchdowns, but he averaged 5.5 yards a carry. I think that number will go down because he's going to be the main back, but I think his touchdowns are going to go way up. And even if he has 225 carries, that's over 1,000 yards, and I put him at 4.5 yards a carry just to be safe, and he's still solid number. So I think if I have to take my chance on somebody who makes it to the top 10 who's not currently being drafted there, I'm going to put my eggs in the Andre Ellington basket.
All right. Well, let's just go off course a little bit here, and we didn't do this for the other weeks, and if we have time next week, we'll have to do it. Who right now do you have ranked outside your top 10 that could potentially finish as a top 5 running back, or you think maybe will end up as a top 5 running back? And Joe, we'll start with you.
I think Ellington maybe, because I had him in there, but if I had to pick another guy, I think I'd probably go with Gio Bernard. I think the guy is so talented. I have him ranked 13th. I think he's probably – I just see there's a little bit more chances with Stacy and Morris and Ball being all of the bell cow backs, whereas you still have
well, you have Ball at 10, so.
I did have Ball at 10.
He does not qualify.
No, you're right, outside the top 10. But I just think Gio, especially what he can do in the passing game, could just be a stud this year.
Yeah, and I actually have him in my top 10, so he doesn't qualify for me either. I have him at 7. Steve has him also in his top 10 at 8. So, Steve, who are you going with outside your top 10 that you could potentially finish as a top 5 guy?
Well, I have Ellington outside my top 10, so Joe that has that opportunity for sure. But I'm going to stick with – I actually really like Toby Gerhardt in the way that he runs, and I really think he's the best player on Jacksonville, and I think that eventually they'll realize that. So Toby Gerhardt is the guy that I'm really high on, and I would be excited to have and draft where he's going. And I think he has a lot of potential. So I'm going to go with Toby Gerhardt as far as outside top 10 into top 5. It's a tough question, but I think that Gerhardt has that potential for me.
I'm going to go – now I would say Arian Foster if healthy because I have him at 14, but I'm actually going to go Doug Martin. I have him at 12. I just think because he's done it before, I don't see any reason why he can't do it again this year, being under a better coach and everything. Not saying I think he will, but I think he definitely has the potential for me to crack that top 5, as long as he's doesn't get hurt again. It's not good.
No.
So that wraps it up, and we are done with all the divisions.
What a way to end.
Right. Awkward silence. So that wraps it up. We've done all the divisions. Next week, we'll probably spend almost all the show wrapping up the week and talking about how people looked in their third preseason game, which, like we said, is kind of like a preview to the season. We'll also give you, I guess, tight end rankings, and we'll probably only rank maybe 15. And then I guess, do you want to do defense and kicker, guys?
I'd rather not waste anybody's time.
That's okay with me. Okay, so we're not doing defense. We'll just do tight ends next week. Remember to send your questions primetime at Next Level Radio Online or at NXT Level Radio on Twitter, #PTFF. Check Steve out on Twitter at SRichards31. Joe on Twitter is at JoeyWeb32.
You got it.
And I am at at Adam Next Level. I keep screwing that up. You can go to nextlevelradioonline.com.
Computers are tough.
Yeah, for past shows and other things like that, including our running back ranks, our quarterback ranks, our wide receiver ranks. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Just search for Primetime Fantasy Football. You can also subscribe to Next Level Radio on iTunes. We just interviewed Colin Mockery about 2 hours ago. Check that out. Subscribe. Listen. It's glorious. I think that about wraps it up. If you want to join our league, primetime at nextlevelradioonline.com. I think that does it for me. Joe, you got anything?
No, looking forward to hearing about some drafts this weekend and getting to it next week.
And Steve, how about you?
Yeah, I'm just stick with the blog at stevenrichards.net. That's all I got. And yeah, we're doing our draft. We're all in the same league. Our draft happens this weekend. So if your draft is this weekend, happy drafting.
Yeah, good luck. And I guess that's about it. So we will see you next week live. If you can, listen live Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Other than that, subscribe on iTunes or go to nextlevelradioonline.com and you can stream us if you don't use iTunes. So we will see you next week. Thanks again for listening.
The Showcast.
Next on the list is The Nut Job. Voices are Will Arnett and Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson is enough just to get me to rent it.
Squirrels, right?
Yeah, this is the squirrel. I would hope so with a movie called The Nut Job. Otherwise, it's a complete porn title that I'm just reviewing completely wrong.
Liam Neeson in it?
Well, you never know.
Sundays on Next Level Radio.